We're 53 days away from the Raiders being 1-0 and taking down the Chargers. I don't know about y'all. I can't wait for the Raiders regular season. If you're like me, smash that like button right now because we're taking down the freaking Chargers, man. Coming up here on today's show, we're going to be doing a 53-man roster projection before training camp gets underway. I'm stoked to see the rookies out there this Sunday, the 21st. The veterans, they're going to report on the 23rd. And the Raiders are going to have to get their roster down to 53 players. Technically 54. You're going to be able to keep David Agoa, the International Pathway Program player, by August 27th. And I like being able to do these shows because it's really cool to see how the roster projection is now compared to when we do our last and final one right before that final cut down day. If you find yourself looking for training camp news and updates, we got you covered. I know a lot of people were asking me, Mitch, are the Raiders going to do joint practices this year? No joint practices. That's the reason why you subscribe. If you didn't know that information already, I promise you, we're going to have a lot of stuff here on this channel, videos every single day. So the way that we're going to do this is we're going to go through the depth charts, and then I'll tell you who ends up making the team, and the number that you see next to the player is me counting out the 53 players that end up making this roster. So let's first look at the quarterback depth chart. You got 4 guys here. You got Gardner Minshew, Aidan O'Connell, Anthony Brown Jr., and Carter Bradley. To me, the Raiders are going to end up keeping 3 QBs, and I will continuously say that I believe, based off some of the information that I've heard early on, Carter Bradley ends up making it over Anthony Brown just simply because of the offense that the Raiders are going to run this season. Bradley's going to be able to execute it the similar ways of Minshew and Aidan, where Anthony Brown could be another interesting quarterback to just keep on the practice squad. Let's go to the running back room now because this is a backfield that is a little bit lackluster. Definitely has some to be what's desired. It's not a great room. But to me, this is going to be a room that ends up keeping 4. And when you look at special teams, you're going to have Dylan Laube, Ameer Abdullah. They're also going to be a big part of that special teams group. I do also believe that Zamir White and Alexander Mattison maybe get majority of the rushing touches between the tackles this upcoming season. But unfortunately for Braynt Brown, Sincere McCormick, and, I want to be able to keep Graf's guy McCormick, and I've had him actually in a past 53-man roster projected video. But to me, this Raiders team, if they were going to go with 5 running backs based off information that I've received in just the last month, if they were to go with 5 backs, I think it's actually them adding another running back to this repertoire. Let's now go to the wide receiver room. And this is one of the more talented, loaded-up receiver rooms in the NFL. I will say for the 53-man roster projection video that I'm doing now, I did not consider Bowers a receiver. You will see him when we start talking about the tight end, so just food for thought there. I have the Raiders keeping 6 receivers, and very similar to what I said about the running back room, DJ Turner, Jalen Guyton, they have to be able to make some sort of impact on special teams for them to make this squad. I know that Turner has been very impressive, especially Tom McMahon has said that. And then Guyton, he was signed this offseason, but he also has his ties with Tom Telesco from their days back with the Los Angeles Chargers. Tight end room, and this one, obviously, I'm going to have Brock Bowers in. I think the Raiders have one of the best tight end rooms in the National Football League from top to bottom. And I know that we talk a lot about the top 2 guys in Bowers and Mayer, but if we're also going to sit up here and say how often that they're going to run a 2 tight end set and how often that Bowers is going to play in the slot, to me, you got to keep 4 tight ends. And the 4 tight ends that I see the Raiders keeping are the 3 people that were pictured, and then I believe that they're going to roll with Zach Gentry. John Samuel Schnenker, he's an interesting name. I'm not going to lie to y'all because he did play a little bit of fullback at Auburn. And because the Raiders don't have a fullback, could be somebody to just keep in mind. I think they're going to end up going with Gentry. He's 6'8". He's the bigger red zone target. But John Samuel Schnenker, just, an interesting name to just keep an eye out for training camp to see how they use him. Now, it's time to go to the offensive line. And what's really fun here about the offensive line is you got Kolton Miller, you got Jackson Powers-Johnson, Andre James, Dylan Parham, Thayer Munford. All of those players are going to be a lock to make it. Now, before I tell you who ends up making it for the offensive line, you can only keep one of these players. And when you go through and do a 53-man, a lot of times, like when you do it, you get to a point where you're like, I don't know how I have to cut one of these guys. And for me, this situation was this. I had to pick between Dalton Wagner and Chris Smith. Had to pick between one of these players. I was unable to keep both, so I want every single person that watches this video to answer this question here. It's going to be the pinned comment. Would you keep Dalton Wagner at offensive tackle, or would you keep Chris Smith at safety? Let me know down below. You're about to get hit with a YouTube ad break. I want you to scroll on down and give me your answer, because for me, my answer is going to be coming up in just a little bit. For the offensive line, I have the Raiders keeping Andres Pete. I have the Raiders keeping Cody Whitehair. I have the Raiders obviously keeping the rookie DJ Glaze. And if you're curious about how I would have answered that last question, I ended up sticking with Dalton Wagner on offensive line. And the reason why that I'm doing it right now is more just of insurance because there is still uncertainty around Kolton Miller. Now, I was told by Miller's camp that he is expected to be 100% ready to go by training camp, so it all should be good. But then again, if you're worried about injuries, Andres Pete's had plenty of injuries. Cody Whitehair is not getting any younger. And then you got Dalton Wagner to be able to just throw up there into that mix. You have 9 offensive linemen, and it just gives you a little bit more depth. And because if one of your tackles does go down, not that you're weak at tackle, but you're definitely lacking some of the extra depth that you're hoping for. Coming up next here on our 53-man roster projection before training camp, who are the players that I'm going to be keeping on the defensive side of the football? When I used to do this show, 53-man, a lot of times would do it like, what is McDaniels going to do? What would Ziegler do? Now when I've been doing it, I'm doing it like, all right, I'm sitting down in the room with AP, with Tom Telesco, and we're trying to figure this out together and put the best product on the field, which is exactly what I believe that I have done today. So we do have a special live show on Thursday. For those of you that are watching this live right now, Chugs and I are not going to be live on Friday. We have what's known as Chat Sports Holiday, and we're kind of just getting ready for the football season. But we're going to be live on Thursday, and I'm going to pay anybody $100 if they can beat Jeremy Chugs in the new college football 2025 game. It's going to be on PS5, so if you got a PS5, awesome. Add Jeremy, Jew Eagle 96, and our Thursday plan is this. We're going to go live at noon Eastern time, so 6 hours of Raiders Report content. And the viewers that are watching the show, they're going to be able to play Chugs and NCAA. And if you beat them, I'll give you $100. So hopefully you got Venmo. If not, hey, it might just be a dapper do, and congratulations. We're still going to do segments in between the Madden sims, just so you know, so it's still a little bit of Raiders content in there. I'm going to react to the game like I do for Madden and like I do for watch parties, which I think it'll be a lot of fun. We're also going to do a Madden sim up against the Jacksonville Jaguars on that for our Madden season. So if you got nothing going on Thursday, it's going to be a jam-packed show. It's going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait to see it there. And you know what? We might as well just call it. It's going to be Thursday happy hour for 6 hours. Let's go to the defensive side of the football now. Max Crosby, Malcolm Kuntz, Tyree Wilson. These are the no doubt guaranteed making this roster group. After that, it does get a little bit dicey. Reminder again, David Agoa, he's going to end up making the team because of the International Pathway Program rules. But you got some UDFAs in Stone and Gaynor. Then you got some other players in there, Ellerson Smith, Charles Snowden, TJ Franklin's a UDFA as well. Here are the 4 people that I ended up keeping, and Agoa I'm not going to count because, again, you don't have to count him against your 53-man. I end up going with Janarius Robinson, and to me, at this point, the Raiders gave Robinson a 1-year, $965,000 contract, and yes, he dealt with that issue in the past, but just because nothing has happened yet, and because it's been months at this point, to me, he's going to end up making the team, or else why would you keep a player that's kind of been a little bit of an issue this offseason one time? And yes, it's only one time, but for the Raiders, the one time, the thing that he did is unacceptable to me at least. But the fact that he's still on this team tells me that their plan is to end up keeping him. Let's now go to the defensive tackle group here. And since I counted Tyree Wilson as a defensive end, I'm not going to count him here as a defensive tackle. So Christian Wilkins, John Jenkins, Adam Butler, these are the easy names that end up making this team. The next interesting name that I do find myself just putting on the list here is Byron Young, the 3rd rounder out of Alabama, getting ready to go into his 2nd year, and I'm kind of hoping that he's able to take that next step with the defensive line coach and Rob Leonard, with our defensive line in general. I also have the Raiders keeping Nesta Jade Silvera over Matthew Butler. He's got more of the ties with Antonio Pierce, and quite frankly, I just think he's a better fit for what we need. We need a bigger DT up the middle compared to Matthew Butler, who's a little bit more soft and really hasn't been able to show that he's able to stay healthy even this year, even last season. And when he's been on the field, it hasn't been good. So these end up being the 5 defensive tackles I'm keeping for the Raiders. If you don't know, we're doing a Raiders meetup Saturday, July 20th at 1 p.m. Here's the date. Here's the address, and we're going to be there for a few hours. Like, shit, I could be there 4 or 5 hours. I could be there 2 hours. Just depends how many people are going to be there. I've had a few people tell me that they're driving in from Oklahoma, that they're driving from a few hours away. It's going to be a fun event. It's going to be at a Mattito's, which is like a Tex-Mex restaurant. You can go check it out. It's owned and operated by a Raiders fan, so we'll be able to get some good deals, have a good time. Football season's right around the corner. We made it through the dog days of the offseason. Let's have one fun day, some food, some drinks, and then it'll be time to talk some actual Raiders football because the following day is training camp, which the rookies are reporting. I'll also say there's a chance a Raiders player's family will be there. Let's go to the linebacker unit now. Davante Adams, Robert Spillane, and Eichenberg. All three of those linebackers end up making this team. There's been reports out there that Luke Masterson's been the linebacker 3, so has he have the opportunity to sneak in and get that job done? Also, Darian Butler, he's got a lot of connections with Antonio Pierce. Kanai Mauga keeps on hanging around our rosters where he's just been on our practice squad. Hell, he was even on our regular roster a little bit at times last season. And then you got second-year guy Amari Burney from Florida, who's shown really good athlete, but he's a part of that old regime. So the 5 linebackers that I have the silver and black keeping are as follows, and I'm just going to go with the 5 best in my opinion. You got your top 2 dogs here. Luke Masterson deserves a lot more credit. He's played a lot better than what he gets credit for. Eichenberg was drafted, and then Burney's your special teams guy. Let's go to the cornerback room. It's going to be the room that I think a lot of people are staring at, especially during training camp, because there are just so many unanswered questions here. Nate Hobbs, Jack Jones, both of these guys are a lock. Outside of that, though, I can make some arguments of why you would cut certain players. Now, the Cameron Richardson, MJ Devonshire, I see the Raiders keeping all of their rookies this upcoming season. You got Jacorian Bennett as well. You're hoping he gets a little bit better. Brandon Faison needs to take that next step. And I don't think that the 6 names that I'm going to show you is going to surprise anybody because I don't really know any other 6 cornerback situations that we could go with here that would give the Raiders a lot of confidence. I'm still really, really hoping that we add another corner to this roster to make this a little bit better of a unit because there's some upside here, but there's still a lot of unknowns and a lot of question marks. And quite frankly, there's only 2 players that are even shown right now that I even have somewhat confidence in. Let's go to the safety room, and this was, a little bit heartbreaking, and you kind of already know the route I'm going to go because I ended up keeping Dalton Wagner, which means I have to end up, unfortunately, cutting Chris Smith. Jaden Grant's another player that continues to get some interesting hype this offseason, but I had to go with 4 safeties, and I didn't love the fact that I had to cut Chris Smith, quite frankly. I think the reason why I did it is because I do think that our safety depth is a lot stronger than, that other tackle grouping that we would have needed. Now, sure, I could have maybe moved on from Jalen Guyton. Sure, I could have moved on from a DJ Turner. There was definitely other spots that I could have done, which it hurt, but to me, I can't figure out where Chris Smith is going to play. So because of that, I ended up keeping 4 safeties. Let's go now to special teams, and it's going to be Daniel Carlson, A.J. Cole, Jacob Bobenmoyer. That rounds out our 53-man, which we got some of the best special teamers in the entire business. To me, A.J. Cole's a top 2 punter. Daniel Carlson's a top 5 kicker in the league, and Bobenmoyer's a long snapper. They've been keeping him around, and, good for him. So who did I leave off my list? I know I had to have left somebody off that's going to tick somebody. It's just what it is, man. It's what it is. So who did I leave off my list? Let me know down below. And I wanted to just show y'all, my thought process when I did this 53-man. So it was, here's my last 5 in and my last 5 out. The guys on the left were the ones that just squeaked in, and they were able to get in. So Dalton Wagner was 52. Jalen Guyton was 51, Carter Bradley, 50, DJ Turner, and then Nesta Jade Silvera. On the other side, it went Chris Smith, Matthew Butler, Anthony Brown, Tulu Griffin, Ron Stone Jr. So it was kind of an interesting thing to look at from top to bottom, and I do think as training camp goes on, as the preseason goes on, you could potentially see some of that last 5 in, last 5 out. Definitely do some switching as the season goes down. Reminder, we will be live for every single preseason game. We're also going to be probably live right around when the cut deadline is. It's going to be August 27th. I don't want you to miss it. This is when the Raiders Report starts getting pretty wild here when the actual football content gets rolling.